Right.
Okay, hello fellow Beastians. This is your one and only gaming beast, aka Darabka from Darabka's Dungeon. And today, as a guest, we have the one and only Francois, aka JdrD30, D30,
Yeah.
and who has been a part of the RPG YouTube community for a long time. And yeah, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing fine. Thanks for that kind invitation. Frankly, I don't know what to expect today. To expect.
Oh yeah. No, we're just going to talk about. It's going to be mostly. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. I want to ask you first, how did you get into role playing? And I just make a brief intro. First, let's start out with a brief introduction of who you are and what you do on YouTube and
Okay.
such.
Well, I've been in role-playing games for 28 years, and I'm from Canada, Quebec province. I got introduced. Well, I was a big fan of fighting fantasy game books and the such. You know, the choose your own adventure book.
Yes, I know Fighting Fantasy. I have said that multiple times. I'm a big fan, and I grew up with that too. My
Yeah,
cousin
yeah.
had them in Hungary.
Well, I had a blast back then, and I was really into that kind of setting. And my local library organized some kind of event around fighting fantasy game books. But I just got 13 when this activity went, and they separated the group by in two groups, and I was with the older kids. And the older kids, well, the older of the group was 18-year-old, and they wanted to play Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. So it was a real blast for me. I was sitting at the table. I was used to fighting fantasy. The character sheet with only three stats, and you have a four pages character sheet for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. But uh, I remember the game was not good. If I looking back, but back then it was fantastic. It was a huge freedom, and 2 weeks after that, I've bought the red box and began to begin some games with my friends or with my brother and my neighbor. I really discovered something back then. And well,
Awesome.
yeah, I discovered not so much time after that the Marvel superheroes, the Phase Rip version, and that also blew my mind. And Star Wars has been a huge D6 been a huge part of my RPG life for at least 20 years or and 25 years, I say,
Awesome.
and
Awesome.
many other games. Mhm.
I have a lot in common with that. I mean, I have said this already before that was fighting Steve Jackson, Ian Livingstone's
Yeah.
Fighting Fantasy has been my favorite. I know it was a very simple character sheet and combat system. What you had strength,
Yeah.
luck, and
Uh,
skill, and your
yeah.
health.
Yeah. Skill. Well, depending on the book, sometimes there were added rules for some books, but most of them have skill, stamina, and luck.
Yeah, stamina. Right.
Yeah.
And I remember those, and I do know that it eventually evolved into what we now know as Advanced Fighting Fantasy.
Yeah. I'm really into that one. Yeah.
Nice. I haven't played it yet. They came out with what is it, a new edition just recently?
Yeah, second edition. Well, I'm really into it. I have even on my channel, I have some videos. I will be doing more kind of a walkthrough of the game. Well, when I discovered that game, it was a real joy for me. It was kind of going back to my roots. And well, the way they did the role-playing game, it's great. The basic is the same as in the game book, but they added just what you need to have a unique character and total freedom in role-playing game. It's a very rules light system. Yeah, and you could
Yeah.
do anything with it.
Yeah. I mean, also you mentioned the Phase Rip, and that has been a game that I liked. I came into contact with that in college.
Yeah.
And it was a system I liked because it was very simple and it was very good for superhero gaming. But I've used it for other stuff too, and but mostly for superhero stuff and similar stuff like that. I think it works really well, and it's very
Mhm.
quick. D100 system and everything. So uh, yeah, I mean, FaceRip has definitely been a part of also my gaming experience. Um, what have you been doing in recent times, gaming-wise?
Well, Advanced Fighting Fantasy has been probably the game I invested the most in the last 2 years. I haven't played that much. I had some campaigns and some one shots, but well, a game that I have took the time to sit and read and understand it was that one. Otherwise, I'm a player in the Pathfinder campaign. I played Darkeye with you since 15 sessions, and it's very fun. It's very well.
Wait. That game is the Dark Eye, not Pathfinder.
No,
Or
no, yeah, it's for the Darkeye. Yeah, we play
oh,
Darkeye.
okay. And you have a separate Pathfinder game that you're involved with,
Yeah,
right?
I'm playing Pathfinder at home, but sometimes we change game. Recently, we have a couple of sessions of Star Wars,
Nice.
and sometimes I do one shots of Men in Black role playing game.
Oh,
It was a
cool.
Yeah, that's a setting I really love. I have learned to love the setting. It's one of my favorite setting. It's not a very intellectual one, but if I want to do something quick, easy, and that will be in the right tone, Men in Black, it's my go-to game. And yeah, and with my kids, I play Hero Kids. It's a role-playing game.
Hero Kids?
Yeah, it's a role-playing game for kids from 4 to 10 in the age. I have my two
Oh,
sons.
nice.
Yeah. It's a very, very, very simple game. I found that well, it resolved some kind of a problem for me because we were playing Pathfinder or other stuff at home, and my older son, which is 6, was always coming to the table and he was always asking questions and wanted to participate, but we were trying, when you try to have a scene and you see his father playing at night and getting angry at another player, he didn't understand what was going on and he was
Right,
asking
right.
questions. It's just a game, but he
Yeah.
was always there. It was difficult sometimes to manage, so I decided to have a game just for him, and we play with the same players. That all my players from Pathfinder come to the table, and we play maybe half an hour of Hero Kids before getting to our game. Yeah, he does have his dose, and he's really good. He for a 6-year-old, he have some. He come with some cool ideas sometime, and yeah, I let him do what he wants. It's a very permissive game, The character never dies in that. They can be knocked out, but there's no death or bad.
Right. It's more, it's appropriate for kids. So.
So, absolutely. And the gaming, I use the game modules that they sell for the game. They are very cheap, and the game modules are very simple, kind of. Well, there are lots of dungeons or forest encounters, and it comes with everything you need. The paper counters of every encounters and some
Right.
advice for new game masters. But I do improvise a lot through that. But yeah, and doing half an hour, 45 minutes with them, it gives them their dose. So I will do a review of that game on my channel, and I really highly recommend it. If you have to deal with childrens, you have to if it's your own children or if you have to work with children elsewhere. Hero Kids is a great game to introduce very young players.
Right, and I've seen a game like this before, and that one was with mer creatures like mermaids and mermen, and I've seen a game, and it was specifically made for kids, like very
Yeah.
rules light and very, pretty much no violence of any sort, very kid friendly. It's like you play in a way a cartoon,
Yeah.
and I think that's a great way of getting kids into the game. And I find it great that they make actual because role playing in general is considered something for more like teenagers to adults,
Yeah.
And I was the same guy. I was that kid once because my brother.
Yeah.
I'm about 4.5 years younger than my brother, and my brother, he was playing the Dark Eye, third edition with my friend. I was back in Germany because I grew up in Germany, and And I was the annoying kid that would always come and say, "What are you doing? I want to play too. I want to play too." And then eventually he let me. And I was about like 8 or 9, and that's like I would say 10 or something like that. That's like where you can start introducing them to a
Yeah.
other role-playing game. But I would say the ideal age is between 12 and 14.
Well, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, that's the ideal age. Well,
but
what
there's
I
no
do
such
for
thing really as an ideal age because now we have also role-playing games for kids, so any age almost.
yeah, well, it can be done for age. Yeah, the Mermaid game I've heard of. I saw a review on the Gaming Geek, Kurt
Yeah, that's the
Legal.
one I've seen too. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and
The
well, this summer I work in a library. That's what I do for a living, and I organize events with readers, young readers. And I had, I put role-playing game on the schedule. It was aimed for teenagers, but we didn't have any teenagers coming to the event, so we made it for younger kids. And I had, a table of 6 kids. We were all playing Advanced Fighting Fantasy, and they really enjoyed it. They really learned something there, and yeah, I'm really glad that I did it finally for younger kids. They had a great time with that.
Yeah, that is great because I think in general also why I like role playing games because even as a little kid I loved playing play pretend where we just pretend stuff that would
Mhm.
happen
Yeah,
and that's basically I mean role playing games is play pretend but you have dice and stats
yeah,
basically and you have somebody who tells you what happens that's another big thing, a storyteller, a DM,
yeah.
a director, or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, that's pretty cool.
Mm.
Um, yeah, and what I ask a lot of times to people is that do you have any a game story that like what is one of your best role-playing experiences and what is one of your worst role-playing experience that you experienced?
Well, it's hard to say. Best role-playing experience. Well, one of the game that I have the most, in my mind since forever, it's a Call of Cthulhu game,
Hmm.
where it was a very simple scenario, but the game master, well, in real life, it wasn't a very expressive person, but he was the right game master for Call of Cthulhu. He wasn't showing anything. He was just describing the stuff, and we were going crazy throughout that, and throughout all the session. It was in a train, and something strange was happening during the travel, and we were searching like crazies what it was about. And one of the wagon they had there was some mafia guys in that, and we messed up with them thinking that they were involved, and they weren't. So we got lots of trouble, and some players died, and we never saw what it was. The journey ended. One of the player was stuck in the engine of the locomotive, and dead, and yeah, but I don't know that the mood was just right for the game, and well, it was 20 years ago, and we still talk about them. Like one great session we had. Well, I had lots of great sessions, and even now I have great time. But a whole session going in the same direction from the start to the end, that one I quite remember.
It's like a very focused, like as you said, the mood was very focused and it felt very
Yeah,
focused in general. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I don't have Call of Cthulhu, but I consider this game to be, in my opinion, one of the best role-playing game ever because, well, for you have the right mood and the right system with it. It mixes well. You have to have a good game master because I saw so many Call of Cthulhu game going like Indiana Jones movie with lots of monster to shoot, but that's not what Lovecraft is all about.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, I only played one Call of Cthulhu game, a Cthulhu by Gaslight. Matthew, the Gentleman Gamer,
Yeah.
has hosted that game, and it was a really cool game. And I was like, we were all like psychologists, and we went to this med from all over the world, and we were all this. It was really cool because the mood was really cool too, but it was definitely we had some monsters, although we couldn't, really fight them really well. I mean, it was like once monsters appeared, in a sense, it was kind of over in a sense. But
Yeah,
I find the way how you describe it, that's pretty cool. If you don't see the monster or whatever, what it is, what has taken I think that's very effective. And I think it's very complex, very hard to get the mood of a horror game right. And I haven't played even that many horror games,
yeah.
or I don't think I ever even ran a horror game yet. I had elements of horror in games, but I hadn't like have a full horror game. And
Mm.
although in my fantasy setting, I'm thinking of having a game where they go to this one island, which is just like a kind of a nightmare island, like actually a whole continent. It's kind of like my version of Mordor,
Okay.
but it would be still probably D&D because we use D&D for the most part, so it wouldn't be probably quite as effective. If I could do something horror, and if I want to bring something up to compare it to, I don't know if you know the video game Amnesia: The Dark Descent.
Well, learned a little of, but not much, no. But
It's a
yeah.
really cool game because it really what it achieves is it creates this feeling of dread without jump scares, without cheap scares. It's mostly creates a mood, a very creepy mood. And you start in this castle and you don't remember anything and then you find these pages written to yourself, kind of like it's from your journal and everything. And I think that would be kind of interesting. Like I would create the character and they would start and I would write all the manual, something like that. It might be a little bit railroady, but it could be interesting, I think. So.
Well, I'm not a big fan of horror, but I remember I ran a D&D Rule Cyclopedia campaign, and I threw them a little child, but that child was quite creepy. She was
Ah,
kind of
okay.
a creepy child. I like, and the players really enjoyed it. What they discovered is that she was to be leading an army of undead when she was to be adult, and the kind of her master was searching for her. So they did protect her, but her destiny was quite fulfilled because she came from the future. I had a crazy story, but that girl was creepy.
Interesting. Right, right. You've been talking about Star Wars games. I haven't ran or played even a Star Wars game yet, but have you heard about the new one, The Edge of the Empire?
It seems very interesting. I followed the Rune Slinger video tutorial
Right.
about it. Was well, I find it quite intriguing, but I don't feel the need to go to that game because I was always satisfied with the first edition of the D6 system that came in 1987.
Right.
Uh, yeah, and I've tried some of the D20 stuff for Star Wars. I had lots of fun with that, but I came back, to the root, to the first version. It does what I need to do. The game had lots of flaws in it, but I've been running the D6 system for 25 years, and I have house ruled it, a lot. So the way I run it, I remove flaws that was annoying me, and it goes very well. And the D6 system, the way I run it, that's what I use for my Men in Black when I run Men in Black one shots. It's a very free form kind of, just target number thing, roll pool of dice, and I don't stumble too much on the rules now. I don't even when I run Star Wars or Men in Black or any D6 system game. I don't. I never open a rule book during the game and during preparation. I only use, write some stuff on a little paper for what for the scenario,
Right.
the things I've prepared, and I let myself go. That's the kind of game I've played so much that I don't need the rule book anymore. Hmm.
Those are the kind of games. Yeah, yeah. I used to be like this with GURPS, and that's when you really know a system, and it really feels like that. that's the best time to DM, like, and it
Yeah,
takes a long time. It takes a lot of games and years until you get this down,
yeah,
but that's when you can have the flow go almost like uninterrupted, and that's the best game when the because one of the biggest things that interrupts the flow is if you have to check the rules and everything, and that's usually in the early games,
yeah, yeah,
and one of the things is if you know the rules that way. Another thing that interrupts the rules is if a player has a question or says no, this is not how it's supposed to be. When you start arguing about something, and then you have the confidence to say, well, this is how it is, or even if it's not exactly how it's in the rules, you say this is how the rules are after, because this is my house rule, so to speak.
yeah.
Um, Now, you spoke about the game that you enjoyed the most, the Call of Cthulhu game. Is there a game session that you think is the worst that you have participated in?
Well, there's a lot of that too. Well, we all have our dose of good games and bad games, and well, one of my worst, I remember some game of Rifts or Robotech with the two Palladium games. Well, what went wrong with those games is that the game master, one of his old-time friend, came to the game, and he was
Hmm.
so happy to have him. And that guy, okay, that guy is military, he's in the
Right,
army. So he was,
right.
a tactical guy.
Yeah.
He was on the field often, and when he was on vacation, he came to town and he joined the game. But when he was there, my game master was so happy that he game only with him, and and they were talking, very low. You could do that, and well, as the game was progressing, all the other players, we were looking at each other and beginning to do something else, and going, doing some stupid stuff and all that, because yeah, we were getting bored. And at some point, the guy turned to ourselves. Okay, we have an attack, so you roll that die for that skill, and it was no, sorry, but yeah, I remember that game to be quite boring, and unfortunately, it gave me a bad impression of Rift. I know that Rift is a great game, but that's the only contact I had with that game.
Well, I'm about to actually run a one shot, so you're invited to that game if you wish to join and if you have the time to join.
Well, I think Palladium do good stuff. Recently I've bought a used copy of Palladium Fantasy because I wanted
Right,
to check it out. Yeah.
right. That's actually something I might get into myself. I've been invited to a game, and I probably will join. And Rifts is a game where I feel that it's gotten a lot of bad heat. In this situation that you describe, it wasn't the game system's fault. It was simply the GM
Yeah.
did a big boo-boo. He did a mistake, and we all make mistakes as GMs. But this is really bad if he only focuses on one player.
Yeah.
That is one of the big sins a DM should never do, is to only focus and to on one player, because the point is that it is supposed to be a you all are playing, you all are in the world, and you have to give everybody a chance to shine. You have to give everybody a focus. Even if the party splits up, which I don't like, but if this party does split up, then you have to focus once on this guy, then the other guy, and then you have to know how to do it. At best,
Yeah.
you are together, and everybody has a chance to interact, because this is the whole point. The
Yeah.
DM gives you the world, and the players interact, and then the DM says, "Okay, this is what happens. This is how a role-playing game should go. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter
Well.
system or setting. This is how the general." So.
Well, yeah, but I'm not a fan, of role-playing games that mix up so much stuff like in Rift. I'm not a big fan of that. So if over that you have, bad situations around the table, but yeah, but I think Rift has so much following. It has to be a good game in my opinion. But I'm not a fan, of that kind of mix-up, like
Yeah, yeah. The
Shadow.
kitchen. The,
Yeah,
so
like
sorry.
Shadow. Yeah, no, like
Yeah, yeah.
Shadowrun. I'm a big fan because I don't, if I want to play something like Shadowrun, I'd rather go with Cyberpunk.
Right, right. you're not a fan of the mixed setting, the kitchen sink setting, as they call it. I like it, but it's not everybody's cup of tea. And there is a beauty of having like a clear setting, like a pure setting, like fantasy, science fiction, cyberpunk, horror, whatever, superhero. You might actually enjoy. I just recently played Heroes Unlimited, which is
Yeah.
a superhero game. And since you also mentioned you played Phase Rip, I'm guessing you're at least to a degree also a fan of superheroes. You might enjoy Heroes Unlimited.
Yeah,
So,
it seems to be a good game. I'm not in much into superheroes anymore, but I
okay,
have confidence that Heroes Unlimited does the job well.
right, right. Um, and yeah, well, that sounded cool. Is there any RPG that like a new RPG that is about to come out that looks interesting in your mind, or?
Um, well, I'm not that much into what's coming. The only thing, well, the latest thing I've bought, it was fifth edition Player's Handbook,
Right.
but it's not that much new, and just just a new version of something that was already there.
Yeah.
I was looking up to the Lone Wolf RPG that Cubicle 7 will be. Yeah, it was on Kickstarter, and it was quite successful. But I don't think I will buy it. But it's because Lone Wolf was another kind of game book, choose your own adventure series, and I was a big fan of that, so I was curious about that. But I already have Advanced Fighting Fantasy. But I know, well, talking about Advanced Fighting Fantasy, I know that something is in the progress for a science fiction of version of it, the role-playing game for
I
Fighting
do.
Fantasy.
I do remember for Fighting Fantasy there was at least a couple of books because usually they were set in the fantasy world of Titan.
Yeah,
They had a couple of books that deviated from that
yeah,
were science fiction more like that, and or other some. I know that there was one post-apocalyptic one,
yeah. There
and
was a
another one
Freeway
kind of
Fighter.
right Freeway Fighter. Now I remember that because it had a cool well, it was heavily inspired by the Road Warrior or Mad Max,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah. Well,
so yep.
well, the role-playing game is in the process of is being written right now. I don't know when it will come out, but yeah,
Right, right. Who knows? These things take time. Fifth edition is a big deal. I haven't bought yet the player's handbook, but I will. And I have played actually the game. I have played it in. I'm playing now a campaign with Barker and an alternate campaign with Fox Winter.
yeah,
And as like if Barker cannot come or cannot DM, then we play it with Fox,
yeah.
and it's a good game. It's D&D basically, but they simplified it a lot. That's what I say. That's
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
the
that's what
yeah.
I saw so far. Yeah, I'm quite satisfied with how it goes, but I don't have the intention to run it since I have other plans. But I'm quite, I'm quite happy with it.
Right, right. I mean, I think D&D will do well now, and it will also it will make role playing hopefully in general more popular again, because it has been popular also with Pathfinder and stuff, but it has become more of a niche thing. And I have a feeling that 5.0 will be a thing again. It will make role playing also more interesting to the mainstream. Um, what I wanted to ask you now is that if there is a role playing game that you like, game that is overlooked in your opinion, and that should and maybe an older RPG that people don't talk about or don't play that you like and it should be played more.
That's a good question. Well, in general, the D6 system was when Star Wars license was removed. I think it was kind of lost and forgotten. But the D6 system is a very powerful game system. Uh, after Star Wars left the building, they tried to put some other games out, but they didn't quite have, the sparkle that Star Wars had in the game system. But
Right.
but for me, it's a very, well, the D6 system is a very easy system to use, and I really like it. So no, otherwise, an older game. Just trying to think about older games that I have. Well, I don't have much in mind, but something overlooked. Uh, I don't know. I'm a big fan of Young Kingdoms and Stormbringer, Elric, and all that.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. I haven't read it yet, but I'm familiar. I'm a big Conan fan, and in the
yeah,
Conan comics, they actually did a crossover with Eric
Elric.
von Mallenboe and
Yeah,
this.
absolutely.
So that's a that's a book that I really need to read eventually. Book series.
Oh
So
yeah, it was one of my favorite, and not the game itself, but that series. I think it's overlooked a little. It was quite hype in the 60s and 70s because it's
yeah,
kind of psychedelic, psychedelic fantasy. But
yeah,
uh, it's a very great setting, and I think that the game that the various role-playing games that came with that are fabulous. Right now, there's a role-playing game that is only in French for Elric, and it's approved by the author of Elric, Michael Moorcock, saying that
right,
it's the
right.
best version ever. Well, I'll have to see that. I have bought the book, and I'm not sure about the system. I really like basic role-playing because it
Right.
was the game system that was running Stormbringer. And
Yes,
that
yes.
newest version, I'm not sure yet. There's some interesting stuff, but though it's like changing old habits. It's not always easy. And
That's
uh,
what that's one
and
of
is
the
it worth
biggest
it?
problems. Yeah.
Yeah, is it worth it?
It,
Yeah,
it's a time investment, and the older you get, the less time you have, and the more you focus on things you know. And it's like that's the biggest thing with role-playing games is the biggest hurdle for new role-playing games is that a lot of people, they think, oh, I like the setting, but I don't like the system. Like let's use I don't know D&D or D20 or GURPS or something that
yeah,
I'm more familiar with, and even if the system is better, you have to learn a new system again. And learning a new system is not an easy thing because often you have to rethink everything. How,
yeah,
oh, combat works this way and skills work that way, and there's these extra rules and there's these weird rules. And sometimes, nowadays you have rules where the role of DM switches and all this stuff. So you got a lot of funky new rules. And, there's a lot of people that just say, oh, let's go back to something simpler, and with D6, what they had was the Star Wars franchise, which it already people just went there because Star Wars is such a big thing,
yeah.
and you can print anything. You can still print almost anything. You can still print Star Wars on anything, and they will sell it, and a
Oh
lot
yeah,
of junk too. So that's like a brand that has survived to this day, and it as
yeah,
even the three bad movies couldn't tarnish it that badly to make
no,
people completely forget their love for Star Wars, and that's why they're willing to accept. They're still excited now for the seventh movie,
no, yeah,
and
yeah,
but we all know there's a good chance that one will suck too. But there is a chance that it could be really good, and from what I heard, it could be really good. So I'm interested also with the Edge of the Empire because with that one they're trying to make it more. It's like the rogue. The setting is like the rogue Star Wars stuff. Like you play the bounty hunters and the
yeah.
smugglers and stuff. Like you don't play the Jedi's necessarily or force
Not
sensitive
yet,
people.
but they just got out Age of Rebellion, which opens to
Mm,
another kind of that, which is the same system, by the way, and
right. I haven't like I made a character. A friend of mine. Uh, he's starting a campaign eventually, so I made a character because I have actually such a thing as an RPG bucket list, and I just talked about this before, and I just remember one of the things on my bucket list. I really need to write those things down because they're on my head, but I need to write it down. I wrote it down I think once, but I think I lost it. But one of the things that is on my bucket list definitely is play and DM a Star Wars game. Now I did DM a Star Wars game in a forum, but I used the phase rip rules, but it worked pretty well. and it was the player was a Jedi, and it made it very mystical. So I went with the more Jedi aspect, But we didn't finish it. The player lost interest and disappeared. But I would definitely love to DM Star Wars again with the D6 system or another system even. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
So the system you talked about, that's something is worth checking out. I think.
I will
Yeah.
have a series of video on D6 system in some future because I want to. Well, there's not much vloggers that talked about it, and I want to make a real walkthrough of it, showing how it works, and having some videos on how I do it because I do it very. It's a very rules light system, but the way I run it, it's lighter than that.
Right. Right. That's been very popular now. Rules Light in general has been very popular in recent years.
Yeah, well, I think it's because most of the gamers are parents and are working so they don't have time as they had. I used to run a D&D third edition campaign, and I remember that I had to study the rules every week to make it flow. But right now, I couldn't do that. I don't have time for that.
Right, right. I think in general, I totally agree with you that most players nowadays are adults, and often they have almost always they have responsibilities like family
Yeah.
and work and other things, and so they just don't have the time anymore. So
No.
I think that's why the fifth edition will be popular again, because also with younger players and new players, they can get into the game because it's easier now, and
Yeah.
and older players they'll get into the game again because they don't have to, and it is very easy, in comparison. It's still D&D though. It's still D&D. The basics are still there. You still roll the D20 to get over the AC and everything else. It's still D&D. You have the same monsters, the same
Yeah.
classes, the same races,
But it
and
feels more D&D than fourth edition. I have
yeah,
I
yeah.
have nothing against fourth edition, but it wasn't my game.
I played and I DM'd fourth edition. I actually owned the books, but I felt like I enjoyed it, but I felt that they were trying to make kind of a war game, or they were trying to attract the collectible card games and the MMO people to it. There were some things I liked about it, but I must say I played a little bit fourth edition, and then afterwards I switched to 3.5 because I thought that
Yeah.
was better.
Hmm.
And now I'm thinking like that I might switch to 5.0, but I don't think I will completely switch because I think 3.5 is good.
Yeah,
And
it's really good.
and I think what I will do is that I'll have a campaign. If I play D&D, I will always decide. My two choices for D&D will be 3.5 and 5.0. Now I've only played Pathfinder once, so I'm open for Pathfinder too. But because I think I could learn Pathfinder, because what I've seen, it's very similar to 3.5.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's well,
So the switch would be quite easy.
yeah.
Um, but I have a lot of stuff for 3.5 that I still want to use. So we'll see.
Well, it's
Um,
you can play Pathfinder and using 3.5 or 3.0 stuff. It's not a big conversion to do.
no, I've seen that. It really isn't. So I still have a couple of. I have one Pathfinder character from a game which they stopped, and I still would like to play him, or at least use him as an NPC. So who knows? He probably will jump over to my 3.5 game.
Yeah.
But right now, as playing 5.0, that's a system that I want us to invest money into, and yeah, so I'm excited for the future for role playing. I think it's even with all the video games and all the computer stuff out there, I think role playing won't disappear. You know,
No, it won't.
it's an experience that video games and all this virtual stuff cannot replace, really. You know, so I like video games too, but it's two different things, really, for me.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. I'm not a fan of video games, but role-playing games.
right.
No, it can have it. I play it with my kids. I run it at my library for kids, and they really dig it. And it just needs some people to show the younger generation the power of that game.
Well, especially if, like, I remember when I was a little kid, right?
Yeah.
Um, we had board games and role-playing games before we ever had video games, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what I always remembered is that there was so much imagination going in there. You could imagine so much stuff. Where with a video game, you have it already there, and it was interesting because like one, it's like it's a completely different experience. Even a board game like Hero Quest, we still imagined it, you know,
Yeah.
and it was a different experience really, and
Yeah.
video games never replaced that. We thought that it would replace it, but
Oh, it will never.
it can't because the imagination is infinite, whereas a video game is always only so big as how many you know gigabytes it has or terabytes or whatever, you know. So it's always going to be limited.
Yeah.
But I like both, but you know sometimes I play more role-playing games than video games, you know, and I'm getting to the point where I mean I like both, but role-playing games is something I know I'm never going to stop doing. With video
Yeah.
games, I'm not quite so sure, you know. So, uh, but anyway, do you have any final thoughts for this? Because we're getting to the end of this interview.
Yeah. Well, it was quite nice. Final thought. Well, I think talking about role-playing games and sharing it on YouTube and on podcasts and talking to everyone can make great press to role-playing games. And also, well, well, all we live in a great era for role-playing games with all the hangouts and all that. Can really make things more popular. I find it very handy, with our Dark Eye campaign. I really watch every sessions we've made. I've watched it afterward, and it helps the memory, and it's a very enjoyable campaign. It's quite different from what I've done so far. It's a very we lived. Our character are doing their day-to-day stuff, and I like that. I don't know why, but I think we had that 3 fights in 15 sessions.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. And I only jumped in after I didn't jump. I wasn't part of it from the first one,
Yeah, yeah,
so
you
I was only part of one fight. But I don't see it as a problem.
no, no,
Maybe I would have made a more intellectual character, but I think we need fighters in this group too. It's just often with the mind rolls, it's like I'm not doing really well. But last session I was lucky because swimming was
yeah,
like fine, no problem, you know.
no, no.
So
Well, but it's a very interesting and well, the combats are quite deadly. That's fortunate that we don't fall into too much of that. I remember Dark Eye when I played that 25 years ago. We were losing a character every two combats.
it's much deadlier than D&D. It's like
Yeah,
more. I mean, there is magic and there is healing. You can get potions and stuff, but even the older video games, I remember the combat was very tough. You know, even just
yeah,
fighting a bunch of orcs
oh
multiple
yeah,
times, I had to restart the combat. You know, because the game was actually quite a good simulation of the Dark Eye. You know,
yeah,
and even though it wasn't an older game, but you can die very easily. You know, it's like once you get surrounded, it's like really tough. You know, and there's some magic items you can get, but they don't just lie everywhere around, you know.
no, and
Like yeah, one magic item is like a huge deal. You know, it's like a huge deal. You know,
yeah,
where
yeah,
D&D it's more it's different. You know, it's a little
it's
bit lower
different.
fantasy.
Yeah, well, I have ran, D&D 3.0 with very low magic items, and
Yeah.
when they were at higher levels, the game was hard to run because everything was unbalanced. The game is meant to have magic items in it.
Oh
Well,
yeah,
3.0
definitely.
was 3.0 was that way at least.
I think D&D is meant for a very specific type of game where it's like you have magic, it is there, and you will find magic items, and you need to munchkin the shit out of your characters. You know,
Yeah,
where the Dark Eye, I find there is combat, but I always found that's why I was always used to I didn't mind that when people complain often in the games when I play D&D or ran D&D where, oh, this is too tough or whatever. But I'm like, well, I'm used to it. I played the Dark Eye, so we had
Yeah, yeah,
characters die quite a lot, and even there they say with potion drinking, it takes 3 rounds to drink a potion.
yeah, yeah,
So it's like even if you have and even if you try to make a potion, it's much harder. I mean, you know what Narrowbin said with the idea of there's this one plant that grows in the orc lands, and that you need that to make a magic potion to refill your mana, your astral points. So
yeah,
a magic potion is like, you know, even harder to do but I will say this: it's not a Vancian system. You have a pool, and I like that more
yeah,
because you can choose whatever spell you know or like what you want, and it's in many ways flexible more. Although the new D&D magic system, I like it a lot too
yeah.
because you don't fall into the pit trap. Oh, if I would just memorized, I don't know, stone to flesh, then I could have saved my friend and we could have gotten out there. But I can't, and I can never go back there because I didn't memorize this one spell, even though I have
Okay.
it in my spell book. But anyway, yeah, give any final words to our viewers, to our listeners about your
Well,
channel and whatever.
yeah, well, okay. If you want to see my channel, it's half in English and half in French. I have a lot of French viewers. In fact, my French side of my channel works very well. So if you are French speaking, you can come by my channel, JdrD30 on YouTube, and also I have an account on Vimeo where I ramble a lot more. I decided to use, there was Vimeo RPG Brigade opened earlier this year for different reasons, but I decided to use it to do my less structured video. When I only ramble, I put my stuff on Vimeo, but when I prepare a video, more serious one, they are on YouTube. And yeah, if you want to check out the Dark Eye game, for me it's I live at Eastern time. It's 11 o'clock for me, in PM, but you can check that out on the Nerubin's channel. And what else to say? Keep on gaming, guys.
Keep on gaming. You're right. Thanks very much, Francois, for the
Well,
interview.
thank
And
you.
yeah, and to all my viewers, listeners, talk to you later for the Death Mug of Doom.